Peace Barricade.
Hello and welcome on the Peace Barricade. This is Maria Cernat. I am an academic based in Bucharest and I am producing this podcast, Peace Barricade, to advance the agenda of peace, the idea of peace, especially in Eastern Europe, and especially since we are neighboring a country that's been in a war, a terrible war. It's been like 3 years now, and it doesn't seem to be stopping. That is Ukraine. This is when I decided that I should give a voice, especially for the peace activists with a long-standing activity that were way more consistent than we in this field of peace. And this is why it is my pleasure to bring to our cameras and to our microphones Reiner Braun. He's a historian, he's a journalist, a long-standing peace activist coming from Germany, executive director of International Peace Bureau. He was very much involved in this very wide and complex peace organization. And the first question that I'm going to ask is the following: why? Because peace in the progressive movement, I would say, is the most marginalized, is the least to be expected to get grants, isn't it? So it is the least profitable, so to speak. And we live in a period where people seek personal profit more than anything else. So why? Why peace? And why peace activism?
Yeah, what is the biggest profit? The biggest profit is life and survive. And the war is the opposite of life. I have sometimes the feeling that people really don't understand what war means. Can you imagine how people are looking like when a bomb killed them? How they are looking like when the artillery is shooting? Or something is coming. There's really nothing. And you see in the faces and the bones of the killed people, you can see only suffering. And these are young men, mostly men. They're 18, 19, 20. Life is in front of them. When they really want to have profit from their life, they have to survive. That is why we, regardless if the time is good or bad, are opposing war. Because war is the opposite of humanity, the opposite of life, the opposite of developing culture and a good life, the opposite of creating a family. That is the deeper reason why peace activists all around the world are fighting for peace day and night. And they are fighting for peace if it is profitable in the sense of the government is following them or not. Mainly, most of them are in opposition to the government because the government is looking for the profit of the economy, the profit of the big industry, above all, the profit of the military industry. What is this for an industry? What is profiting from killing people? This is so deeply inhuman that we have to overcome it. That is why I'm a peace activist, and I have so many friends around the world which are fighting with me for a better and a peaceful world.
You've been around for a long time, and you've been around in this pro-peace movements for a very long time. And I live with the impression that, especially in the 70s, there was an opening towards ideas of peace. And I think it was a moment of glory for pro-peace movement because the public was more aware of the dangers of war in general and of nuclear war in particular. And I think something of that awareness was lost. Am I right in this perception of mine? Maybe it's just a perception.
That's a good question. I have and also the feeling that sometimes you lost a little bit the awareness of peace. But now we have a new study in Germany, a study from the Shell Institute, which is connected to the big company. And they found out that 81% of the young people are worrying about the actual situation of war and peace. They are feeling that they are living in a very unsafe and unsecure situation. So even in this generation, was far away from peace, which was never taught in peace, which had no experience in teach by their parents or their grandparents, like I had. But they are also worrying about the situation. So I think all the generations have in mind that we are living in a dangerous situation. The problem, how the people are reacting to such a situation. And there's only a minority which is acting and to be engaged in peace. The majority put it by side. They think about the next party, about Christmas, about family, about jobs, and put away the question of peace. And our job is, and our responsibility, and also the challenge is, that we are convincing these normal people in our society, please, when you really want to have peace, we have to fight for peace. Peace is not falling from the heaven. It's not coming from everywhere. Either we will get it or we will not live in a peaceful world. So the main challenge for me is to convince people to be open for discussions, to explain again and again that peace is the first human right, that peace is the biggest value, what we need and what we have to fight for. And, I'm not really not optimistic that we cannot change the situation. I was also engaged in the peace movement in the beginning of 80s, starting with the cruise missiles and the Pershing II. In the beginning, we were also only a smaller group of people, but we could convince a lot. And then we had the big demonstration. Then we had 5 million signatures under a big German appeal against these rockets. But it starts with some. And we have now a little bit the same situation. We have to start with everyone who is with us, who wants to fight with us, who is going on the street with us, who is going with us and talk to the people. And then let's see where we are in 1 year. And I'm a little bit optimistic that we can change the situation.
I'm happy that you're optimistic. At the same time, even in the peace camp, we see that there are people that want peace, but with Russia defeated. And unfortunately, there are those who want peace, but somehow are enjoying the fact that Russia is winning in Ukraine. Now, how do we fight this? Because I think without a common voice, it's very difficult to advance a peace agenda.
We have one big problem. We have the geography, and you cannot change the geography. And Russia is a part of Europe. And we want to have peace. We have to live together in the whole family of all European countries. We will not have peace when we exclude one of the countries, explain one of the countries to an enemy. That is like in the family. You will have struggle in the family when someone is always opposing everything, is fighting against everything. So you have to unite. And what we now need is to come back to a Europe of common security. We have to understand that all countries in Europe have specific security interests. The German have this, the French have this, the Poland have this, and the Russian have it. And we have to balance the different interests. We have to find common points by the different interests. Peace is not a value of love. It's not a value that you have to love the other, but you have to respect the other. You have to see the other as a partner, as someone who also wants to have peace. And then let's sit together and find where we have common points and where we could not agree today or tomorrow. There we have to find ways how we can solve these problems or postpone a problem for later times when we have other conditions. But again, I think in this common house of Europe, we have more and more enough. We have all the ecological crises. Climate crisis has no border, not between Russia and Romania, not between Poland and Germany, no border. The climate crisis reflect to all of us. We have in all countries big social problems. you have unemployment, we have too many poor people. We have the huge problem of refugees in quite all the European countries. So there are many common points where we can agree. And by these points where we could not agree, we have to find ways how we can live each other without war. I think this is the challenge we are facing. And please, everyone has to accept that we are living in a common world and above all also in a common house of Europe.
About Europe, Hans Hedrich is a collaborator of World Beyond War Romania, a chapter that we open here and we try to advocate for peace. I have to confess, it's very difficult because we don't come from a culture where militancy, advocacy are very, familiar since we live in a democracy for 30 years. And also our culture is not one where you devote time and attention to militant causes. It's not something very popular, or if it is, unfortunately, it is only popular in the big cities, privileged zones of urban citizens that are engaging in such activities. But he is very, very much engaged in promoting peace, and he has a specific idea. And he specifically asked me to ask you, what do you think about holding multilateral and inclusive European Peace Conference under the umbrella of OSCE or UN, with the participation of all interested or relevant states like Ukraine, Russia, USA, EU. And since 2025 is a symbolic year because it is important in marking 10 years since the Minsk II Accords in 2015, and 35 years in the Paris Charter for a New Europe, 50 years since the Helsinki Final Act in 1975, and 80 years since the UN Charter in 1945. How about holding a peace conference in Europe? How about this specific idea for advancing peace? What do you think about it?
I'm quite sure that we will have such a peace conference next year. I'm a member of a preparatory conference which is preparing a European peace conference in Helsinki, connected to the 50 years anniversary of the OSCE conference in 75. This will be a non-governmental or peace organizational conference. And I think it is very important that we connect much closer the peace movement in Europe. Above all, and now frankly my words, the stronger peace movement in the Western European countries like Italy, France, Germany, and Great Britain, also Belgium and Dutch, with the weaker peace movements in Eastern and Central Europe. We have to work much closer together. And I think such an international peace conference with all the European countries, from my point, including activists from Russia, are very important, very helpful. And I can only ask you and your colleagues to join the preparation for this international peace conference. We will definitely prepare something. And, let's start with first steps. Maybe in the beginning of the next year, we have not only a bilateral Zoom call, but maybe we have a Zoom call between 5 or 6 countries discussing how we are preparing such an international peace conference. And so let's develop a way and a strategy to the conference, which brings us much nearer than we are now.
Yes, I think it is vital to have such a peace conference. And, since we are approaching the end, I have to respect your time. We started a little bit later than expected. Look, I have a big frustration with the left, big one. And also with the German one. I mean, how come Annalena Baerbock, she comes from the Greens, and usually the Greens were associated with the left, with the progressive agenda, and yet she's among the most vicious warmongers in Europe, promoting only the idea of solving the conflict in Ukraine through military means. Also, you see progressive feminist movements advocating for war and militarist solutions because there are conflicts, but you can find different ways of solving conflicts, not through military means. And on the other hand, what do you see? With the exception in Germany, I think she's the only exception, of Sarah Wagenknecht, you see the alternative für Deutschland, right? The right-wingers fighting for peace. Now, how did we ended up in this impossible situation? Whereas if you want to vote for peace, you vote for a right-winger. How come?
First of all, let me say I'm not a member of any party. So I have the great situation that I'm free to criticize everyone and everywhere.
Great.
The Greens were never, even historically, never a left party. Even the founding members like Petra Kelly, with whom I was working very closely, was always saying, we are a party, we are not right, we are not left.
Mm-hmm.
But now, the Greens, not in all countries, but in the majority of the European countries, are the biggest war monsters you can imagine. They are the war party. And they are also in all the other political fields. They are an absolutely liberal, neoliberal, capitalistic party. So we should be very clear. And Annalena Baerbock is maybe only the most stupid picture of these parties. Because you know her speech yesterday when she was answering to Lavrov. She was saying 1.3 trillion people in Europe are opposing you, to Lavrov. 1.3 trillion people in Europe? What is this? This is education in the fourth class of the school. That is Annalena Baerbock, forget her. But she's definitely dangerous. So, but we have, and this is really a very difficult situation. We have the difficult situation that parts of the left were following the Social Democratic Party in the direction of war. The main reason for that is, for me, that these so-called left parties want to become a part of the power structure. They want to come to government. And the entrance door for government is in all European countries, first, to say yes to NATO, second, to accept NATO walls. And that they were doing, including parts of the left party. But in Germany, you have the good situation that we have with this Bündnis Sarah Wagenknecht, Alliance Sarah Wagenknecht. We have a new, clear anti-war party, which is very, very helpful for the development of peace actions and peace activism and supports us a lot. And we are working with the Sarah Wagenknecht party closely together. But also to say, we have, again, a lot of friends in the left party, which are in the same line of thinking like we. So we have partners in two parties, and maybe also we have a minority of friends in the Social Democratic Party. We are opposing, which are opposing the main guidelines of the leaders of the party. So we have friends there. Now, one word to the AfD, Alliance for Germany. This is absolutely a war party. The party supports the 2% GDP for military spending, even they are calling for 3%. They're in favor of the militarization of the European Union. They are in favor of NATO. They are supporting all illegal genocide activities of Israel. They are in favor of the arms export of Germany and European countries all around the world. The only point where they reflect the feeling of the people in the society is the Ukrainian war. But they are for a German army which should strengthen their tradition to the fascist army till to 1945, with symbols, with songs, and with everything. So they are never a peace party. They are playing a very, very good game. but they are in reality a part of the elites. And they will be accepted by the elites when the elites need them. Up to now, the elites don't need them. So that is my point to AfD. And when you are looking to their social program, it is absolutely unsocial. It is deeply neoliberal. They want to change, they want to privatize, for example, the German pension system totally. So they are never an ally for us. This does not mean that many of their voters, many of their supporters, even members of their party, are not in favor of peace. Yes, we have to explain what is the official position of the party, and we have to convince the supporters and even the voters of the AfD to go with us on the streets for peace. That is the challenge. That is really not easy to do in reality, but we have to do it when you want to organize and when you want to mobilize much more people for peace than in the past.
And also, there are the opportunistic ones. I mean, I know people who are afraid about war in Ukraine, and they were willing to vote for a right winger just because the war is close. So you want to get rid, of the fire that is nearby, but you don't care about the war in Gaza. And you just want to be opportunistic and think about yourself and not think about what is happening in Gaza. And I think that is very simplistic, and I want you to explain why. Because you have to oppose all wars, because a war in Gaza, now we see what's happening in Syria and Lebanon and everything else, can very easily come back to you and bite you from the sensitive parts, even though you are opportunistic and say, oh, I just don't want war over here in the neighboring country. Never mind what happens in the Middle East.
Let me first say we should never forget that we have 21st wars in the world and over 200 armed conflicts. That in every of these conflicts, day to day, people are dying. And it's a shame that we forgot in many, many issues the war in Sudan, that we never were really reflecting the wars in Africa, above all, what is calling the first world war in Africa around Congo. With at the end now, during the last years, more than 1 million killed people. So this is really a shame that it is not on a high level of our agenda. And you are totally right, we should never forget it. And we should definitely never forget the 3 hotspots which has the chance and the critical possibility to develop to a world war. This is on one side, Ukraine. This is on the other side, what I'm not calling Middle East, but I'm calling West Asia, because this includes Iran. And the third point is the Indo-Pacific. All of these 3 regions have the possibility, the danger for developing, for a dynamic, for an escalation dynamic, till to a nuclear war. We should always focus on all these wars, and we should never forget that in many parts of the world, I mentioned some, people were killed day by day in different local, regional wars and armed conflicts.
And the last question, thank you so much for your time. I promise this is the last one. Now, what do you think about the potential of multipolarity and BRICS to bring the world closer to peace? There are those who hope that given the history of China that was not dominated by the intention of domination, and since China became such an important power in the global arena, maybe we will get closer to peace. Whereas there are those who say, no, there will be just more bullies at the table. And if something fundamental does not change, having more bullies except the United States and the Western powers at the table doesn't change anything. What do you think about that?
The hope, and I will first say it a little bit more general, the hope for peace and for a more justice world, for a world which is really trying to solve the global problems like hunger, poverty, and climate. This hope lies in the global south. The development of the global south, the more actions and the more activities of the global south, the waking up of the countries of the global south is a great hope. And we should definitely support everything which makes these countries more active, more engaged in international politics. And the top of these global south, maybe the avant-garde of the global south, is for me BRICS. BRICS is a very difficult issue and has a lot of internal problems. And I'm definitely not in favor of many of the BRICS countries and their internal development. But as a geostrategic opposition to the imperial wars, it is absolutely needed, helpful, and we have to support whatever we can. They are the opposition to a world which is ruled by the NATO and Western countries, which is ruled by the imperialistic United States, and can open the way to more justice and to more peace. That is the chance. And when we are looking to Ukraine, who will bring peace to Ukraine? It is Brazil and China. Without Brazil and China's mediation, there will be no peace in this region. And without the big discussion, which is China doing with Russia, and the pressure coming from these countries, we will not come to negotiations. So they are very, very helpful for the peace development. They are absolutely needing as an opposition to the global south. They are finalizing a 500 years period, the period of colonialism and Western dominance, which was connected to economic stealing of all products, goods, and people from the global south. So for me, there is a lot of hope, and there is a lot of need for stronger contacts to these BRICS countries and for working together with them in the direction of a more peaceful and more justice world.
Wow, thank you so much. This is such, it's so good every time to talk to you. I'm telling you, Romania lately has been in the grips of a very, very strange situation. Now I just found out that the Constitutional Court just annulled the first round of the presidential elections. There's a lot of turmoil. And your thought-enriching words are so therapeutic in a way. Thank you so much personally and in the name of the viewers, dear viewers. If you like what you saw, help us spread the message of peace, subscribe, share the content. Thank you so much again, Reiner. And dear viewers, I'll see you all in the next edition of our show.
It was a pleasure to talk to you.
Great.
Peace, Barricade.